All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are talking about the incredible social forces that literally shape who we are, from the day we step onto a playground to how we navigate our later years. We're going to explore the world of our peers, the real science behind friendship, and all those invisible rules that run our social universe.
Seriously, think about it for a second. Can you remember a specific moment with your friends from way back when, good or bad, that's just burned into your brain? Of course you can. It's something we all experience, and there's a really powerful reason those moments have such a huge impact on who we become.
It all comes down to this idea of a social mirror. See, our peer groups are basically the first place, outside of our own family, where we get a real sense of who we are. They reflect back at us what the world is like, how we measure up, and where we fit into the whole picture. Now, the key word here, honestly, is comparison. At home, it's tough to really compare yourself to an older brother or a younger sister, right? But with your peers, you get instant, direct feedback. Are you faster, funnier, smarter? It's a fundamental way we start to understand our own abilities. So this whole comparison thing, it naturally creates a kind of social hierarchy, or what we all remember as the social ladder. And, developmental psychologists actually have a really structured way of looking at this whole thing. Yeah, they break it down into these 5 main categories, and they figure this out by asking kids who they like the most and who they like the least. So you've got your popular kids, everyone names them as a best friend. Then average kids, who get some positive and some negative votes. Neglected kids are interesting. They're not disliked, they're just invisible. Hardly anyone mentions them. Rejected kids are the ones who are actively disliked. And finally, you have controversial kids, who are a total mix. A lot of people love them, and a lot of people dislike them. And look, this isn't just about playground drama. This stuff has serious long-term consequences. Study after study shows that landing in that rejected category is a major risk factor for all sorts of issues later on. We're talking depression, conduct problems, and even dropping out of school. And don't just take my word for it. Listen to what developmental psychologist John Coy says. This isn't just some phase kids grow out of. Being rejected by your peers can actually set the stage for much bigger problems down the line, like antisocial behavior. The social world of a kid is no joke. One of the most painful ways this rejection shows up is, of course, bullying. And the scale of this problem, it's just huge. A big national survey found that nearly 1 out of every 3 students said they were involved in bullying, either as the one being bullied or the one doing the bullying. 1 in 3. And when we talk about bullying, it's not always what you might think. While boys are definitely more likely to get into physical stuff, getting hit or pushed, the data shows that the most common forms of bullying for everyone are verbal and social. Being made fun of, having rumors spread about you, or just being left out on purpose. Okay, so that's the dark side of the peer group. It can be a really tough place. But what's the antidote? How do you fight back against all that pain and rejection? It's actually pretty simple. You find your people. It's all about the power of real, true friendship. See, friendships aren't just for fun. They serve these 6, absolutely essential functions in our lives. They give us companionship, so we're not lonely, and stimulation to keep our minds active. They offer ego support, that friend who tells you you can do it. They give us that social comparison we've been talking about, plus affection. But the big one, intimacy. Having that person you can tell anything to. And here's what's fascinating. The very meaning of friendship completely changes as we get older. When you're a little kid, a friend is basically just someone to play with. But then, as the theorist Harry Stack Sullivan pointed out, adolescence hits, and the need for intimacy just explodes. All of a sudden, friendships are about trust, telling secrets, and making a deep emotional connection. All right, so we've been looking at things on a really personal level, but our friendships don't just happen in a bubble. So now let's zoom the camera out, way out, and look at the huge, invisible forces that are shaping our social lives every single day. So, for example, think about the cultural software that's running in the background of your life. Cultures tend to follow one of 2 big blueprints. In individualistic cultures, it's all about me, personal goals, individual achievement, being independent. But in collectivistic cultures, the focus is on we, what's best for the group, maintaining harmony and relying on each other. And those values change everything about our social world. And another one of these massive forces? Media. Now, get ready for this number. 8 hours and 40 minutes. Any guesses what that is? That's the average amount of time that 11 to 14-year-olds in the US are plugged into some kind of media every single day. But wait, it gets even crazier, because nobody just does one thing at a time, right? You're texting while you're watching a video, while you're scrolling through something else. When you factor in that media multitasking, the number blows up to over 60 hours of media exposure every week. It's just a mind-boggling amount of time. So what's the big deal? Well, that constant flood of information comes with a price. Research is showing a really clear connection between all that media multitasking and some pretty negative things, like lower grades in school and even weaker executive function skills, which are the skills you need to focus and plan. So, with all these changes, from the schoolyard politics to the digital age, how do we think about our social world as we get older? I absolutely love this concept, the social convoy model. It's this idea that we travel through life with our own personal network, our convoy, of friends and family who give us support. And the important part isn't how big your convoy is, but the quality of the people in it. And this idea of a convoy helps us totally bust a huge myth about getting older. The old way of thinking was this disengagement theory, that as people age, they should just slowly pull back from everything. Well, we now know that's completely backwards. The modern view is all about activity theory. The more active and involved older adults are, the happier and more satisfied they'll be with their lives. It's that simple. But here's the twist. Being active and involved doesn't mean you need more friends. In fact, it's often the opposite. There's this other great idea called socio-emotional selectivity theory, which basically says that as we get older, we get smarter about our social lives. We start to prune our social circles, choosing to spend our limited time and energy on the relationships that bring us the most emotional satisfaction. We go for quality over quantity. And that brings us to one last really big idea to leave you with. People are living longer than ever before. But here's the thing. Our world, our cities, our jobs, our entire social structure was basically built for a much shorter lifespan. It was built for the young. So the real question becomes, as we start living to be 90 or 100, how do we start redesigning our world to support not just a longer life, but a socially connected and meaningful one?